Everyone, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Hip Hop Hustle podcast. We are back for another week. I'm here with a fantastic musician, Max Berman. He came through friends with Gus Glasser, who is a previous guest on the show. And if he's anything like Gus, this will be a really fun conversation. Even if you're not, I'm sure it will be fun either way. But for anyone who hasn't checked out his music, you're missing out. Some fantastic singles you've released in 2024. There's Hanging Loose with Josie Gillen for $1 as well. You've got Fried, Upper Peninsula with Gus. Yeah, man, you've been busy, and yeah, they're very pleasant to listen to. It is really nice to just have on. I definitely felt myself wandering like mentally in terms of just like falling into, just letting it take you on a journey. So that must be pretty cool. Like when you make music and for people to listen to it and to be like, yeah, that's really good.
It is. It's a cool feeling, man. It's something that I don't know, I guess as you probably saw from those songs, these are all collaborations with other artists, right? So that's the thing that I love about it is you can capture something different with all these different people and hopefully give anybody listening to it something totally different with a bunch of different sounds and a bunch of different concepts and a bunch of different vibes and a bunch of different messages too, I guess, the other part of it.
Would you consider going and just doing a solo album?
Oh yeah. I have a few different sides of what I do, right? I collaborate and I write with people, but my main thing has always been lyrics and writing, whether it's poetry, just free form, little short stories, or writing songs. So I have a ton of stuff that's all just my own. And the things that I write with Gus or with Josie or with other people like Cam Barnes is someone else I'm probably going to mention a lot. He's a fantastic producer and hip hop artist. He's also my roommate. So when I'm doing things with them, I'm not necessarily accessing the full internal monologue, just my own concepts of what I want to say. I'm using my experiences and my relationships with other people to create something. And I have a whole different side of that, which is when I'm just sitting here looking out the window or something, what am I thinking about? What am I writing? Those things turn into their own songs too. So I do have a whole, I don't know how many songs it is now. I think it's maybe 12, 13 maybe of songs that are all solo songs that I play live a lot. And so that's usually just me and a guitar or me with a couple other instruments. And at some point I'm going to get to recording it. But for now, it sort of lives in little bars or wherever else I happen to be playing.
Yeah.
Or for the,
that's kind of cool to have this live version of you versus the online version of you. It's kind of, does it feel interesting that you've got these two sides of you that you can explore at different times?
It's a good question. Because I don't know. I don't know if there's two completely different sides of me. It's more of, there are in the ways of the different sides of things that I do as a musician and as an artist. And there's different roles that you fill. I love being in that supporter role. All right, whether it's Gus or someone, Gus comes to me with a concept of a song. How can we make this as good as it can be? And I'll work with him with the words and the concepts and the structure and how do we build this to be the best it can be. And that will, whether it has my name on it as a co-artist on Spotify, is not really the intention. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But those sorts of songs do give a very different image of me because I'm sort of filtered through these other artists that I work for and work with. And so there's something really nice about having that separation where, okay, when I do a solo set, I just get to sit up here and talk to people. And it's something that people won't get from going on Spotify or Instagram or whatever and seeing the things that I've done with other people. So in that sense, I don't know, there's a little bit of freedom in that, right? It's just this is just me. This is my hour up on stage or whatever. And I'm going to tell you jokes. I'm going to tell stories. I'm going to sing a song or two and we're going to get through this together. And it's going to be a good time. I mean, yeah, taking those spaces for yourself is important, especially if you're a really collaborative artist.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine that it's quite freeing as well. Because there's something about putting things online and it lives there, and then you're kind of oh, it's there, and that's once it's out there, you can't take it back. You can always remove it, but it's always been out there. Someone have seen it. So when it's live, it's like this is it. Once you do the live piece, and the only people who will ever remember it are the people who were there, and there's no going back. It lives in memory rather than lives in the space of on. I don't know. There's something beautiful about that, of the lived experience of like you can only access it once. There's no second time. Even if you see the show again and it's exactly the same, there's no such thing as the exact same show, because every nuance matters when it's live.
Absolutely. And some of my favorite artists and favorite shows I've been to are ones that I've maybe seen these people 2 or 3 times, but things were very different each time I've seen them. And they might be playing in a different configuration, or they might play totally different songs, or they might play the same song a different way. And that's something that I really appreciate in an artist and in a singer and a songwriter and a band and a performer, is if they can bring a different energy and a different perspective to their music based on whatever their day was. I think there's a quote from Todd Snyder, a songwriter I love. He's like, I don't want to hear what you think. I want to hear what you had for lunch. I don't want to what's your day? Like, where are you right now? Like, I want to hear it. I want this. Man, you slow today? I want to hear the song slow. Tell me what you've been eating today.
I think that's what people want to hear about their artists. I always find this fascinating thing of like, and it's probably more because it's going on in the US election right now in the race. And we're not going to get into politics, but I just find it fascinating that people are like, hey, Taylor Swift, what's your opinion? And hey, sports star or Hollywood actor, what is your opinion? And it's just like, these are not the people you should be listening to, because their job is not to be present and aware of the political results of different things. And I'm always just like, if you got a rapper to endorse you, I mean, what does that even mean? I don't understand. These are the things, like, I don't listen to rappers for their views on politics. I listen to rappers because I find that lives interesting and I think their music is interesting, and same as musicians. So I don't know. I think there is definitely something to that of like, I don't want to hear about your political beliefs. What I do want to hear is like, yeah, what do you do day to day? Like, what drives you and all those things? And like, what is your life like? Yeah, I don't know. We're obsessed with that stuff.
Totally. Yeah, I don't. It is silly to think that, like, I don't. We've ended up in this place where it's like, if you're going to be a public figure in any part of the public eye, whether it's an artist, a musician, an actor, like a politician, or just like some sort of major public figure, you're supposed to have an opinion, and according to whoever your listeners are, the correct opinion on everything. And I don't know, it's part of me understands, because I think for a long time, actors and musicians and artists, they, writers and all that, a lot of their writing is about, okay, the state of our society. And you want to know what people think about it. My beliefs are, you could listen to the songs and try and figure it out. And if not, ask me, but I don't think I should be deciding an election just because I sing some good songs. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, I get people who are writers in the sense of like, if you wrote a movie or a TV show and like it's a commentary, it's like a dystopian society, I get asking those people, because I'm like, you clearly have something to say about the society we live in, because you've then created a world where it is dystopian in nature. So I'm like, that I understand. But yeah, people who just talk, or like, I don't know, actors are a weird one. And just because you have a crowd and just because you have fans, you feel the need to tell them your opinions. I don't know. If people were to ask me, I would be like, you probably shouldn't be listening to what I say. Like, I'll tell you, but just so you know, like, I'm probably not educated enough to be able to have a valid opinion. So I'm going to say some stuff. It's probably not going to be all right. I might offend some people, but like, if you listen to me, that's on you.
We're good.
We're good. But yeah. I just don't, I've never particularly understood that part of it. Like, people just getting everyone's opinion, like, just no matter who you are, they want that opinion. I don't know, man. I think I think the role of musicians and the role of artists is all encompassing now. Like, I don't think, or maybe I'm wrong, but maybe at some point people were like, you're a musician, you should stick in your lane and you shouldn't be commenting on like important things in our society just because. But then again, I'm like, I guess you also play a part. I don't know. I go back and forth a little bit, but I do find it strange that people just place so much weight on it. They're like, well, if this famous person said it, then it must be true.
I think we ended up there partially because the role of, artists and actors is now more about public facing and an image and a personal brand and a personality that people can like, that the personality has become a consumable just as much as the music and the artistic product, if you will. That personality and that public image is now, that's part of the product. That's part of where you make your money. That's part of what people want out of their celebrities and out of their, musical heroes is, I want to know what's going on in this person's life. And I want to see all these bits of it. And in a way, that's a really nice thing because you can share more about yourself with people. But on the exact opposite end, it makes it harder to exist as just a musician. Leave me alone. Everything else, that becomes harder to do. And I think, especially recently, that's become the norm, is that you're not going to make your money from streaming. It's going to get harder and harder to make money from concerts. So you gotta get yourself out there in lots of different ways. And you end up doing a bunch of different jobs, right? Like you gotta make content, you gotta make videos, you gotta become an editor and a public personality. You gotta be able to a videographer. You gotta work all these things together into one. And I think in that process, we've also kind of put political commentator on that list of things that we want our artists to also do a little bit of. And sometimes it's good, or sometimes it is nice to listen to somebody talk about something that isn't just their music. And, I like it when I get to hear things from musicians I really appreciate and really like. And then I hear a little bit about their lives and a little bit about why they do what they do or what they think about day to day. But also, I don't want them and I don't want other musicians and artists to feel like it's a requirement of the job, you know?
Yeah, I just think some people are stretching beyond where they're probably comfortable. I think that's probably what it is. It must be a bit of pressure as well of things are going on and you've got a fan base. And I'm sure if it's in the society where it's being discussed and your fans are hitting you up and going, hey, what are your thoughts around this? Eventually the dam will crack and eventually it'll spill through and you won't be able to ignore it for that long. So I think there is probably a bit of the clamoring of fans also kind of want to know, do I agree with you or do I disagree with you? And they're willing to draw the alliance pretty quickly based on your opinions.
True. Yeah. Maybe that's a symptom of a bigger, as a society, we're so this or this, tell me now. And I guess musicians and people like that sometimes get caught up in that too. But
which is so weird.
I don't know.
That's probably the one thing I find the most confusing currently in the society we live in is it's either this or that. If you agree, you agree entirely, or if you disagree, you disagree entirely. There feels like there's no middle ground. There's no nuance. There's no well, I agree about this and I disagree about this, and they're all kind of in the same place and they're interconnected. And I don't know. I find nuance is missing currently, and I find that people are so extreme with their opinions on stuff, and it's very difficult to talk to people that are just so staunch in their beliefs.
Yeah, it is tough, and I think nuance is missing, and the nuance is kind of the fun stuff, that's you're barefoot, you're in work boots, or you're somewhere in the middle, and that's probably where most of us want to be, is somewhere in the middle, you don't want to be, sometimes you want to rock some open toes, but, sometimes you need some ventilation. sometimes you want to be covered up. Like, I don't know. You don't have to be one or the other. I don't know why that analogy is what I went for, but
I like it.
I think that's kind of.
I like that analogy. That's a good analogy. Yeah, you don't have two pairs of shoes. You're not going barefoot, and you're not wearing hard steel toe boots all day.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
exactly.
if your shoes are going to be different throughout whatever you're doing, so should your opinions. They should also vary just a little bit.
Exactly. We got Velcro, we got slip-ons, like.
Yeah, we got indoor shoes, outdoor shoes, formal shoes.
There's got to be other ones too. Running shoes,
running shoes, walking shoes, hiking shoes,
sports cleats, golf. Everybody's got a shoe, so create your opinions and perspectives accordingly.
Jeez, if that isn't the lesson to take off this podcast, I don't know what is. But hey, I think that analogy is a really good analogy. Like, yeah, you've cottoned on to something, Max. Which hey. Yeah, well, this early to have a life lesson come through is pretty good for this show, all things considered. But how does that affect you? Because I know that at the beginning we were talking about having your a personality and like a lifestyle brand, and that's what musicians are now having to start to sell. How does that impact you when you make music and when you think about what am I going to release, what am I going to put out there? Like, what happens with that thought process?
So truthfully, one of the best things about kind of the role I've ended up in with that's the best part about it, it's my friends, and the role I've ended up in is I'm helping you create and I'm helping you write and I'm making music with you. And I don't have to be the personality. Like taking Gus, for example, he is, he's all over the internet. He's on TikTok and Instagram. He's making reels. He is that personality. And he's the epitome of everything at once. Like he's trying to do it all. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it exhausts him. I just kind of write songs, and I don't engage with that part as much. When I work with Josie, we don't promote things that way, but, we'll make little videos here and there, and we try to play shows. And I think that's where that's what I try to do, right? Is be there in person. I try to be in bars, in restaurants or open mics or whatever, or house parties or just any of the things, and just be like, all right, here I am. I'll do some shows. I'll talk to you. And like, you get to know me. And that's more of how I want to build myself, is people who know me, maybe know my songs, know my personality. And then if you know, right? And if you're looking at Gus's songs and you can go through the songwriting guys, like, oh, this guy again, what's up with him? And thankfully I have people in my life who are, incredible musicians to work with, and they'll also do the promotion and the harder stuff, in my opinion, the harder stuff. Like the working on music, that's the fun part. That's the easy stuff. Once you get into the promotion and the content creation, that to me feels just that's so much more tiresome, Like I think if you have the right people around you, creating the music doesn't feel so much like work. Right. Of course, there's always two sides to making music. There's like the conception of like the song idea, and then the actual creation. And those two often happen in different times, right? You can be like the conception story, as it's like birth. It's much more fun. Like that's the fun part. And then the rest of it, it can get a little messy. And so when you come up with these song ideas, you're in a room with your friends. You're fucking around playing some chords. You got a melody. You have a couple little lines that are fun, and then you have this idea come. And most of the time, you're not gonna finish it right there. You got to go back and rewrite, tinker, and like try to capture that moment again. And so that'll lead to a little bit of separation between what that original like conceived idea and what comes out. But it's still just the fun part, and that like work towards the end is still fun. The work after the song comes out, to me, not as fun. I'm lucky to have people who will take that role off my back.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is if you don't like doing it, collaborate with the right people and they'll do it for you, so that you don't have to do it yourself.
Exactly. Like I don't know. I know this is the hustle podcast here, but sometimes the doing less work is kind of nice. Not to I am gonna go a little bit contrary to the hustle concept here. Is I don't want to be another burnt out musician. I want to keep the thing I love doing really, really fun. And if that means I am not as popular, that's okay. I would rather keep that. And I'm not saying you can't keep joy and keep that pure like fun of creating music if you also do all this promotion stuff. A lot of people genuinely love doing that too. But this is just me, and that's not what I enjoy. And so I don't know. I feel like I have the luxury of not engaging with all of the pieces of what is now, I guess, the music business that I don't have to engage in all of it.
I think that's the best thing that you can acknowledge to yourself. I think that helps you stay very real and engaged. I think a lot of people try to tell themselves that they like things that they don't like. Like, I think they try and just keep saying, no, I love editing, or I love the posting. And the truth is, you didn't get into music to post. You got into music to make music most of the time, I would hope. So I think there is definitely something important and healthy about going, hey, this is what I enjoy about it, and that's what I'm going to protect, is my enjoyment around it. So I don't think that's a bad thing. And to be fair, when it comes to hustling, you're just networking correctly. You're just getting the people to do it for you. So, but yeah, I think there is definitely something to it. Like, and it always gets to a point where your art starts to become more, but then you have the rest to contend with. Like, you're opening a door where now you're making money and it's your livelihood. And the way you treat your livelihood is different from the way you treat a passion. Because if you only did what you felt like doing, you're probably not going to be making as much money. And that's a weird thing to be in. Whereas if it's a passion of yours and you have money coming from other places, you're kind of like, I'm doing whatever the fuck I want because I'm not reliant on this. And I think that's always a challenge, is when it becomes your only source of income, but it's also one of your main sources of joy. And it's like the pressure and the joy that you have, they can sometimes go against each other.
Yeah, they definitely can. I don't know. There's something amazing about, when you get a check in the mail from, whether it's BMI, however you get your royalties, or you get paid from that show. Like, that's the craziest feeling in the world, is because it's like in those moments, it feels like I didn't do anything to deserve this. I've just been making music. Hey, but it can quickly feel like, once you start chasing that more and more and trying to make more and more money and be just a bigger artist in all these places, you do quickly realize how much work that really is. And it can very quickly become a job. And I don't know, I think a lot of people don't like working. And so people would much rather do the things they love and explore their passions and all that. And I don't know, I think for me, something I've been doing is, even though I don't have this really intense relationship with like music business and I need to make a bunch of money from my music. I have other jobs, like I do other things. But one of the things that I've started to realize is, even if I'm just fucking around in here, I got my guitar over here and I'm just playing songs, looking out the window, and I'm making shit up, in the back of my head, I'm always like, could this be a song? Could I, share this with people? There is always that aspect of like, this could be viewed by other people. So I've started drawing and doing that, and that is something that I know I'm shitty at, it's not, and I have no pressures and no illusions of like, I've never made $1 from it, and I'm never gonna. And there's something really freeing about that kind of expression, because there is no pressure whatsoever, and you don't have to worry a tinker's damn about anything. You can just, and you can do whatever you want. And I think that's something about the creative process we all love and like chase. And that's the best part of collaboration is when it just feels like you're hanging out with your friends, man. You're just messing around, playing chords and singing songs, and all of a sudden you have something cool. And like that, those things almost happen by accident.
Yeah. Do you think it's disillusioning when when you have the idea of becoming a musician, and at the beginning it is very much the artist's journey, and then it gets to a point where like you just grow up a little bit and you see what the reality is? Like, I feel like it would be really tough for a lot of musicians to just be like, oh, this isn't what I necessarily thought it would be. Like, this is very different in the real world as opposed to when you're young and you just have the idea. I think it's the same with acting. I think it's the same with art in general.
I think you are right. That is something that a lot of people come up against, and I've run into that too. Where I think the first time I saw like a song of mine like get hundreds of thousands of streams or something, there's this moment of like, oh, I can really do this. I'm gonna do this, and you start to like you work yourself up, and it's like, okay, now I have to do all of this other work around this to keep this going. And once you run into the reality of what that is, you can, I mean, especially if you're not prepared for it, it really can be demoralizing. And really, but I guess we all need to be knocked down a peg a time or two. And, sometimes those are good moments where it's like, you're not hot shit. You got lucky, man. Like, and that's happened to me. And that's part of life too. But I think those sorts of moments where you're like, you do feel this illusion, it feels impossible, they're fuel for lots of people. Or like, okay, maybe I can't do all of these things, but like, what else am I going to do? Right. It's that like, I don't have any other options, or it's, I don't want any other options. I want to do this anyway. Or you can decide, kind of like me, to just like, you know what, this doesn't have to be the end all be all. I'm going to try a couple times, but if every time you try to climb up, you get just high enough to make it hurt when you fall, and you're like, you know what? I don't need to try to climb it out anymore. I can just hang out at the bottom and have myself a good time.
Yeah. And I think it just depends what you want. I think it's just being honest with yourself, and are you willing to put in the work, and are you willing to go through that? And if the answer is no, hey, all credit to you for being self-aware enough to say no. And if the answer is yes, and it's honest, yeah. And then you get to just protect what you enjoy. Then you get to be like, sick, I tried it, not for me. I get to do what I enjoy now without the pressures of everything else. And there's something better about that than trying to pretend, because like, you must see it, the obsession with numbers of like, my identity and my successfulness is based on an arbitrary Spotify number, or it's based on how many views I get. And it's like, that doesn't necessarily mean you're bad. Like, and that's just a weird thing to just, that's how I know if I'm a good musician, is if my Spotify is big. And I don't know, there's something really damaging about that.
Yeah, it's definitely changed how you view yourself. I don't know. I don't think I would be alone in this. I think I've had moments where I'll have a song do really well on Spotify, and I see these numbers and I'm like, oh my God, look at all these views, look at all this stuff. That's cool, but it doesn't feel nearly as good as when one person DMs you and says, this song touched me in a really important way. It's like, I was having a really bad day, really bad week. This song made me feel good. Or you're at a show and someone comes up to you afterwards, man, you made my day. This is the best show I've seen all week, all month, or whatever it is. Like, those moments mean so much more, even though it's just one person. You get thousands, 10,000 views, listens, all of that. That to me doesn't even feel as good as that one person just letting you know, hey, you changed my day, and it can be something so simple. It's like, I was having a bad day. I'm still having a bad day, but I had a really good 3 minutes, like there's something really nice about that. And so I think those are the moments that that I really look for. That's why I like playing live so much. I want to be a face to people in person, and I will happily write songs for other artists and help people make those songs that other people will be like, man, that really changed my day. It's like when you go to a show, like go to a Gus Glasser show, and I'll see people in the audience singing something that I wrote. That's such a cool feeling. It's those moments of okay, those are real human connection. That, yes, of course it's all real. People listening to your music, or hopefully it's all real and not some robots here and there. But I don't know. There's something so much more fulfilling about that. And I think that's maybe what I chase a little bit more, is those moments of connection with artists you collaborate with, and then the moments of connection with people who have listened to you.
Well, I think it's less self-serving. It's, hey, I want you to feel something and I will get something from you feeling something, as opposed to, hey, I just want to see these numbers. I want to see my rankings. That to me is not the same. That's I don't care as long as people are listening. And that's kind of where I feel music keeps heading, is clout and attention seeking rather than connection seeking. And that's what worries me, because it's a trend that is just not sustainable. It just becomes a different thing. It's a different beast. You just don't make music that lasts the test of time by seeking that.
Yeah, it is true, because there's something very different about music that's made to reach as many people as possible as quickly as possible, versus something that's really supposed to capture a moment, a feeling, an idea. That said, it does make me feel really good when someone's like, hey, you made my day better. So it's a little self-serving.
But
I get something out of it.
But it's not based on you. It's also a surprise. You hope that any artist makes someone feel something. That's the whole point of art. It took me a long time to realize, painting and traditional art, when you go to a gallery, I never understood it. And as I've gotten older, what I understood was there is nothing to understand other than, does this make you feel something? And if it does, great. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so there's something about that of it's just trying to make you feel something. So if you feel something, then that's good. And if you get something in return, Max, that's also good, because you're not a charity in the sense of he's not doing it.
Yep.
So no one ever sees it. Hopefully people see it, but I don't know. I think there is a difference in purpose of what are you actually trying to achieve. So you should get feedback back from people going, hey, this touched me in a good way. And you're yeah, that's fantastic.
I think maybe with anything, right, there's always the back and forth, and we talk about extremes, right? And we are, pulling to those extremes in lots of ways in our society. And there is that extreme of chasing clout. We're going for numbers. We're doing trends. We're trying to make it. So it doesn't matter how good or long lasting the song is, but if it's doing what's hot right now, it's going to be good. And I think with any big push one way or the other, there's always that other side that comes out of the woodwork. And I think there's a lot of people who they may not be as visible because they're not all over the internet. There's lots of people who are deciding that it's not for me. I'm going to do the exact opposite. I am going to write for me, and I'm going to make these songs, and I don't care if you listen to them or not, but these are going to be out there. And I think because it's so easy to make music and release songs these days, I think those artists are maybe give it 10, 15 years, I think those artists are going to become more and more prevalent as well. And I think you're going to have, because of, an accidental algorithm spike or something, somebody's going to blow up and they're like, I didn't want this, and we've had those moments where it's and there's even there's even Chapel Road and stuff. It was whoa, y'all need to chill the fuck out. I'm just trying to make music, relax. And I think those are things that are going to start happening too, is people who maybe didn't expect to blow up the way they do. And man, I've just been doing this for myself for the last 10 years, and all of a sudden somebody else has to be involved. This is strange.
Well, it's like on TikTok when songs that were released 20 years ago go viral.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, this song was good back then, but it didn't hit the heights now. And it's just hit some sort of algorithm. Someone found it. It just happened to. So I think definitely that's going to be the case, is like your people will just randomly be found and they'll be like, I released that song when I was 18. I'm 40 now. And that's not me. Like, I appreciate it, but that was like 20 years ago.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, I've been releasing music the whole time. But I definitely think you're right. Like, because it all lives out there. It's only a matter of time before people find it.
Yeah. And I mean, if they don't, they don't. But it's going to happen here and there. There's going to be those moments where people pop up out of nowhere.
It's also cool to be able to like show your family and like if you have children and be like, hey, you don't know this about me, but I was releasing music for a long period of time. Or like for me, I released podcasts and you can listen to my silly voice and my silly opinions from when I was young and not having responsibility, and you can listen to all the people that I spoke to over the years. So I think there's something about a bit of a legacy that's cool to be able to be like, hey, check this out. This is what I did.
Yeah, it is really cool. I mean, yeah, the way to, like, cataloging yourself like that is a nice thing to do. I mean, even if it's just like, I mean, I have it like in my computer as I've got a bunch of old songs that will never be recorded or released. And I know they never will, but every now and then I'll scroll back. So what was I doing in 2018? And it's like, oh shit, look at that. And it's like, all right, well, that's not that good, but there's some things in here that are fun. Like it captures like a moment. And I don't know, I think those moments, maybe 20 years down the road, they'll blow up. But for the most part, I think it'll just be for us. And that's a good thing.
Speaking of moments, how do you recapture the moment? Because you said that when you record you're coming up with ideas, you're spitballing, you're hanging with friends. Then there's this like spark of an idea and you're like, yes, that's amazing. And then the likelihood of you finishing that song is not great in terms of finishing that song that day. How do you recapture it in the next session? Because there is something to be said for that organic like discovery. And then you're like, well, I discovered it. Now I need to recapture it. Like, how does that process work with recapturing the feeling?
Oh man, that's a good question and a very tough thing to do. There's in my experience with collaborating with people, there's two extremes, right? There's two extremes of thought here. There's people that I live with and work with very frequently, Cam Barnes, Wuda, and Sean Weathers, to name a few that I work with a lot, and they're in the house all the time. They're great producers and rappers in Brooklyn and Queens. And all of like the majority of that stuff, especially when Cam is producing and running the session, we got to get this now. We're capturing moments. We're not letting this moment pass. Yeah. We're not like this beat is not mixed perfectly. I don't have everything in place yet, but get on the mic right now. We're gonna do this. You have a verse, freestyle the last four if you have to. We're gonna capture this moment. And sometimes, we're putting a room mic in, the speakers are in it, and we're not gonna get perfectly isolated sound. Two people are sharing a mic, but those moments feel so good. And if you can capture it and get that moment and that feeling, sometimes that feeling is better than what can happen with a really polished, really well done and intentional recording. Sometimes it's not, and you never really know. So if you can capture those moments, it's good to do it. But, when I work with Gus, it's the opposite. Gus lives in Atlanta. I live here in Brooklyn, right? Where all we do is go back and forth. We're sending audio files. We're sending lyrics. We're talking on the phone. We're slowly building this track. And what happens all the time is you get a demo, right? You have a half-produced beat, you got some vocals and a half-written hook, but you have the melody there, you got vowel sounds, you have this mixture of a demo, and it has the feeling. You listen to it over and over and over again, then it comes time to record and get into that final session. you start to worry because you're not feeling the thing you felt when you've been listening to that demo, when you first came up with this idea. And it's something that is really hard to work through. But in those moments, I think you really have to trust that you had a good idea and trust yourself to just be like, you know what, I'm going to follow through, because it's so easy to just scrap an idea because it's not coming out the way you want it to. And it's, you gotta follow through. So that's the biggest thing about trying to capture those moments again, is actually doing it. Because it's so easy to sit there for 2-3 hours, realize you're not making any good progress and give up. And I don't know, getting those moments is hard, but you gotta power through. And those, it's like this like weird like demo-itis, essentially, where it's like you've listened to this thing for so long and you've got this idea of what the song will be. You're not in touch with what it's becoming. Because as I said, I think I said this before, like the like conception and like birth of the song, they're two different things. And you have to be, like, so something about making a song is like, you have to have that vision of like, this is what the song is going to be, but you also have to be flexible and be, like, think on your toes and be like, you know, roll with it enough to be like, and explore enough and be creative in that way. It's like, you know what, this isn't working. We got to just keep trying these things, try something else, and be open for that song to evolve into something you didn't actually think it was going to be. A lot of times it'll end up really good because you put so much thought into it. It might not be the same thing as that original demo, but it might end up being something really special.
Yeah.
It's just about like intentioned work, you know?
It must be so difficult though, because the feeling would be so strong at the beginning, and then the feeling kind of starts to fade over time, and you almost forget and get confused as to like, did I really feel that way, or was I just like having a moment or a mental breakdown of like, is this real? But I think there is something to that of, you have to trust your past self to be like,
Yeah.
No, I have to trust myself. I know that there's something here, and it may be different than what I thought, but that also is okay. I think you must get held hostage to the original idea and scared to deviate from that original idea.
Yeah, you definitely do. There's something about it that's just like, yeah, it really pins you down into, this song has to be this one thing. And, you know, once you realize it, maybe it doesn't, and then you can start to explore other things. But also, having a finished song, even if it's not as good as you want it to be, way better than having a half-finished song. You know, like it's still way better. And even if, you know, even if it's not your favorite song you've ever made, it might be somebody else's, you know? So it's always valuable to finish those things that you thought were a good idea. And, you know, if at the end of it you decide, you know, this isn't worth releasing, whatever, that's okay. You still, like, you worked that muscle. You still created something. That's like, there's no, you know, there's no bad attempt, right? Like, just making something is making something. And that means next time you're maybe going to do it a little better. You're going to have learned something along the way. You're going to have, you know, you flex that muscle a little bit. And every repetition of that is bringing you closer to being able to express that original idea better and more effectively. So finish what you start is the big thing.
I think that's such good advice. You just got to practice. Like, you got to do reps of it. You got to do it from start to finish. Like, you just got to, the more you do it from start to finish, the better it will feel over time, and the easier it will be to keep completing those cycles. Like, that's what, same in podcasting. Like, people like, how do you get better? And it's like, well, the simple answer is you just do enough of these conversations, and then you listen back and you're like, well, that didn't go well, or that wasn't as good as I thought it would be. And you still put it out there and you still work at it. Like, it's never perfect. That's the thing. You're never going to turn around and go, that was the greatest performance I've ever done. Like, you'll say, I did well, but you're not going to be like, I'm the greatest podcaster alive. Like, those conversations, that thing doesn't happen really, but you just kind of evolve through the journey and you get better, hopefully, through the journey. Because if you get worse, then well, I don't know what's going on, but you
Yeah.
do get better naturally by wanting to do more and wanting to get better.
Yeah, you really do. I mean, it's the same. Like, I don't know. I think if we're talking music or we're talking painting or writing, whatever it is, like you got better at guitar because you practiced. You're running your scales, and then 2 months later, you can play better. Same with songs. You made one, it didn't come out good. You made another one, it might be a little better. You just got to keep doing it. If you're painting, you're doing your sketches or whatever it is. Like, okay, that figure ends up really lopsided. I need to just practice this. I need to listen to more music. I need to look at more other paintings. I need to listen to more podcasts, read more books, see what they did right, tastefully steal, and then come back at it.
Well, everyone has to have inspiration from others.
Yeah.
You can't know how to create an original idea unless you know what is possible already.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. You kind of need to learn the basics before you can start inventing and start recreating and start putting spins on stuff, because it's like a toddler who's like, I'm going to make this brand new food, and they're combining stuff, and it's like, yeah, but you have no concept of what taste and like what it takes to create a delicious meal, but they're like putting all this shit together, and it's like the creativity is always there, but you kind of have to come from a base of something, a base of understanding of the basics.
Yeah. Another good analogy.
Well, we're killing it on the analogy front today.
Like it, man.
Yeah. Well, that might be the tagline: analogies and life lessons. But yeah, I don't know. I think I admire the consistent and never-ending journey of a musician. I think there is something really beautiful about it and really hard, and they kind of go hand in hand. It's beautiful because it is so difficult and so challenging, and it kind of just comes out of you all naturally. Like it requires work, but there's something deep inside of you that needs to get out. Like there's something that obviously you're like, I'm painting now and I'm doing art and drawing and writing. And so there's something there that you're like, I need to find. I don't know what that is. I've always found that fascinating, of like, there's something inside that I seem to want to be able to express.
Yeah. I don't know if it's like, I guess it is different for everybody, but there's something that's, I think everybody should find some form of outlet, whether it's a creative pursuit, like in the way that writing or music or drawing or sculpting or something like that would be. If it's something like podcasting, whether it's working out and like, training for things, or rock climbing, or whatever people do, like swimming, I guess. I don't know. But like all these things, everybody needs an outlet, and it's just as much an escape as it is an outlet, right? It's just as much a like all this other stuff is beating around in your head, and this like all of the weird bits of your life are pulling you down. What can you do that might maybe you'll dwell on it all and write a song that's really fucking sad, and you know what, that's really good too, because we need those. But there's something to be said about something that can pull you away from your day-to-day life and put you something else, whether you're pursuing some sort of goal in like, I'm going to run a marathon, or it's like, I'm going to get this guy on my podcast. Like, I'm going to build this brand, or it's like, I'm going to finally be able to play this one really hard jazz song on guitar, or I'm going to write a hit, whatever it is. Those sorts of pursuits and the like trying to better yourself in whatever way you choose, that's really important, because in order to do that, you have to acknowledge your shortcomings too, and that it helps you in all your assets of life.
Yeah. It also just puts it's less stakes on one thing. Like, being a multifaceted human is a really good thing to be. Like,
yeah.
Otherwise, if you only have one string to your bow, there's only so much you can do with that. Like, you just gotta, be interesting and have lots of random stuff. Like, I just imagine like meeting someone and just being like, they only have one thing to talk about ever. I'm like, this sucks. Like, this is so boring. Like, that's like that. You're just not well rounded. I think you have to have opinions. You have to have passions. You have to have random shit that interests you. And I think we all have random shit that interests us. Like, I told my girlfriend the other day, like, I've started watching arm wrestling videos. I just found it. It just came up on like my algorithm, and I was just like, damn, these people are insane. I don't understand what it is about it that captured me in a way that I'm like, it's cool, but I never thought to myself that would be something that I would be like, hey, check this video out. It's just these dudes. Or just again, pointless. Like, it doesn't matter. It has no stakes in my life. But I think that stuff gives it color of like, that's what makes it interesting, all those shades.
Yeah. Who's your favorite arm wrestler? You got a favorite?
Well, you've opened a can of worms. So there's a guy, Devin Larat. He's like this Canadian guy. He's been in the game for so long. And he is like an ex-Marine, I think he was, or military. And he's really good at trash talking. Like, he talks a lot of shit. But the top dude at the moment is Levan. He's like this Georgian guy. He looks like a bear, like a literal bear. He's massive. He's like, they struggle to move him. But then there's a guy, Brian Shaw, who is a strongman. And he's moving into arm wrestling. And so there's a lot of talk about like, how's Brian Shaw, one of the greatest strongmen of all time, gonna fare in this field? So there's a lot going on in that world.
A lot of drama right now.
A lot of drama. Literally a lot of drama in the arm wrestling, which I never thought existed. And then you start following and you're like, oh my God. And they have fantastic. And they have like left arm, right arm, and they like, oh, it's just a lot. It's to be honest, sometimes I look at it and like, this is just like testosterone field bullshit that everyone talks about. Like, this is just insane, but it's also so like it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like none of this really matters, but it's just sometimes fun to watch these meatheads kind of just wrestle each other on a table. And it's like the old school when you were at school, when like all the boys are like, oh, I'll arm wrestle you, and that's how you decided who's the strongest. And it's
You're
like,
cheating. Don't touch the table.
Yeah, it's like, you're not straight. They still do that shit. They're like, no, he's not straight. And so they get this, it's just like watching kids again. I think that there's something so childish about watching grown men arm wrestle each other.
Fantastic. It sounds like a great sport. You know, we all need to connect with our inner child sometimes. And, you know, if you can do it professionally, hats off to you.
Yeah. Well, their hands are huge. That's the weird thing. It's
that's about it. It's about
leverage, and like they're like the wrist movements and like the whole thing. There is a lot of technique. You know, when I thought about it, I was like, now that I'm aware of some of the technique, I'm like, of course there is. It's a professional sport. But then when you just think about it objectively, like in the past, you're like, I don't know, it's just who's the strongest. No, that's not how it works.
Who's got the most, who can generate the most work, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's just so many different tactics like with it. And like Anyway, we're going to move on. I don't know that much.
Like color. Yeah.
Yeah, there's color. So if anyone wants to talk arm wrestling on the show, they're more than welcome. I don't know enough to really have that many opinions on it, but I think it's just silly.
Yeah. You know, sometimes you don't have to know a ton about it. If the subject itself is just fun, conversations kind of do themselves.
That's true. I actually wouldn't be the worst if I spoke to an arm wrestler. I would find them so fascinating of like how and why you ended up in this sport. Like, I don't know how that even begins. Like, how do you stumble into that?
Maybe is that something you're just like you do at school and you're like, man, I'm really good at this. I don't know. There might be something here.
Or someone said like, hey, you're really good at that. Yeah. I know somewhere where you could like, I don't know, like it's just not the same as
being a little extra money. I know somewhere.
Yeah, well, I actually looked in Melbourne. There is an arm wrestling club. I'm sure there's a few in New York where they have arm wrestling club. Um,
You ever
so
do it?
I've been tempted, but I don't know if I really care enough to, to go and start training. Again, like I just don't. There's always a point where I'm like, what would the point be? Maybe it would be fun, but it would also be silly, and maybe I should give it a go.
Hey, nothing wrong with being silly.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's half of what we do is just be silly and have random shit that happens to us.
You'd hope, Again, color. That's the good stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you add color, my friend. You with your music, I think that's we had a conversation. I had a conversation with a few people yesterday about things we couldn't live without, and music was like the number one thing. Of like, there is a like music in our lives is part of the journey of life. The soundtrack of your life. I find fascinating, and like people like you help provide that soundtrack. It's a pretty amazing thing to be able to say.
Yeah, it is. Sounds very grand when you put it like that.
Well,
It sounds very grand. I feel pretty good about myself right now, actually.
well, that's good. You should feel good about yourself. As I said, man, you make some great music. And
I need one of those falls. I need to fall back down that well.
no, you don't.
Humble me out a little bit.
I'm sure in the next couple of days when you start writing music and you find yourself in a block and you're like, fucking Aaron, I'm back. I'm back.
I knew this was gonna happen.
Yeah. Well, man, I only have one more question for you. It's the only question I planned on the show is probably the toughest question I'm going to ask you. But if you had to recommend one album that everybody should listen to at least once, can be any genre of music, cannot be your own music, what would it be?
Damn. That is definitely the hardest question.
I did warn you.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, no, it preface. You know what? I'm just gonna go with something I've been listening. I'm gonna say Voodoo. Yeah, D'Angelo Voodoo. I think that is a just masterclass in arrangement, groove, funk, and songwriting, composition. And there's like so many different unbelievable musicians on that record. And if you wanted to, we talked about like execution. That's an album that has a million ideas that are all executed flawlessly. And yeah, there's my recommendation, Voodoo.
Awesome.
I've been listening to it a lot recently.
Well, you're the only person to recommend it. So I always love people who've recommended something new other than, sometimes iconic albums is like, yeah, but everyone recommends that iconic album. So no, that's a fantastic recommendation. Max Berman obviously came through. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm really glad we got to do this. For anyone who hasn't checked him out, please make sure you check out his music. As I said, singles, Hanging Loose with Josie Gillen for $1, Fried, Upper Peninsula, Gus Glasser, who's also been on the show. You can check his stuff out as well. But man, you're also doing live shows. Like, do you have any like residencies? Is there a place that people can find you, or are you just like in Brooklyn, wherever, just roaming about?
And every now and then I pop up here and there. I don't have anything planned because I just moved out. But you know what? This winter I'm getting some shows together. Me and Josie Gillen, and ideally, I think me and Wuda, a rapper in New York, are gonna try to get a show together at some point soon.
Awesome. We'll stay tuned, man. Is there anything else you wanted to plug? Anything else you wanted to shout out before we wrap it up?
I just wanted, shout out to Gus Glasser and and then the other musicians I work with in Brooklyn, Sean Weathers, Wuda, Cam Barnes. These are incredible small artists in New York that are, they got shows around. They're releasing albums. I know all of them have an album on the way. There's so many incredible artists that just haven't really been discovered and haven't blown up yet. There's so many people that are doing really, really great things just for the sake of art and for the sake of expression. And I wish these people all the best.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much. It's super fun. It's been a great talk.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming.